The world just changed, and most people do not even know it yet. Right now, as you are listening to this, the Middle East is on fire. Not the kind of fire you read about in a textbook, the real kind, the kind that changes borders, the kind that changes oil prices overnight, the kind that puts the whole world on edge. Let us go straight into it. 9 days ago, the United States and Israel launched a joint attack on Iran. They called it Operation Epic Fury, and fury is exactly what it was. The strikes killed Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the man who had ruled Iran with an iron fist for over 30 years. Gone, just like that. Iran fired back hundreds of missiles, thousands of drones flying across the Middle East like a storm that nobody could stop. But here is where things get very interesting. Iran needed a new supreme leader, fast, and they picked someone that shocked the world. They did not go outside the family, they kept it in the bloodline. They named Khamenei's own son, Mojtaba Khamenei, as the new supreme leader of Iran. Now, the moment that name was announced, the whole world stopped and stared. And Donald Trump, he did not stay quiet for even 1 second. He called the new supreme leader a lightweight. He looked straight into the camera and warned this man that he would not last long. Now, you have to ask yourself one question. What does that warning actually mean? Because when the President of the United States tells a newly appointed supreme leader he will not last long, that is not small talk. That is not politics. That is a threat on the world stage. Stay with this channel because this story is only getting started. Subscribe right now because what is coming next in this report will make your jaw drop. Every part of this story connects to your life, your fuel pump, your grocery bill, and the safety of this entire planet. Do not go anywhere. So who exactly is Mojtaba Khamenei? That is the question every government, every intelligence agency, and every oil trader on this planet is asking right now. Because this is not a man the world knows well. And that is exactly what makes him dangerous. Mojtaba Khamenei is the son of the man America and Israel just killed. Think about that for a moment. His father was just bombed out of existence by a joint American and Israeli military operation. And now, just days later, this same son is sitting at the top of one of the most powerful and most armed nations in the Middle East. He did not get this position because he ran an election. He did not win votes. He was chosen by Iran's Assembly of Experts, a group of powerful religious scholars who sit behind closed doors and decide who holds the highest seat of power in all of Iran, and they chose the dead man's son. Now, some people are asking, is this a sign of strength or a sign of desperation? Because when a country is under heavy military attack and they reach into the same family for a new leader, that tells you something. It tells you the circle of power in Iran is very tight, very closed, and very determined to hold on. But here is what the world is watching most closely right now. How will Mojtaba respond to Trump's warning? Because Trump did not whisper. Trump did not send a quiet diplomatic message through back channels. He said it loud and clear for the whole world to hear. He called this man a lightweight, and in the language of world politics, calling a new leader a lightweight is like slapping him in the face on the first day of his new job. Now, Mojtaba has a choice. Back down and look weak in front of his own people, or push back and risk escalating a war that is already burning hotter than anyone expected. Either path he takes leads to more danger, more strikes, more missiles, and more oil prices climbing through the roof. And that is where this story starts hitting every single person watching this video directly in the pocket. Stay right here, because part 3 of this report is where the numbers start talking, and the numbers will shock you. Subscribe to this channel right now if you want the full picture. This is the kind of news that most channels will not break down this clearly for you. $110. That is what one single barrel of crude oil is selling for right now on the world market. $110. And it is still climbing. Now, for some people, that number means nothing. It sounds like a statistic, something a businessman or an economist talks about on a morning show. But let that number sit for a second, because that number is not just about oil. That number is about everything. It is about the price of fuel at the pump when you go to fill your car this week. It is about the cost of shipping food from farms to supermarkets. It is about airline tickets going up. It is about heating your home this winter. It is about the price of every single product that needs to be transported from one place to another, which is basically every product you buy. When oil goes past $100 a barrel, the whole world economy starts to sweat. And right now, because of what is happening between America, Israel, and Iran, oil has blown straight past $110. And the markets are in panic mode. World shares are tumbling. Investors are pulling money out of risky positions. Banks are watching nervously. Governments are making emergency phone calls behind closed doors. Now, why is Iran so important to oil prices? Here's the simple answer. Iran sits on one of the largest oil reserves on the planet, and Iran sits right next to the Strait of Hormuz, that narrow strip of water that connects the Persian Gulf to the rest of the world's oceans. About 20% of all the world's oil supply passes through that strait every single day. 20% every single day. Now imagine that strait gets blocked. Imagine Iran decides to use its military to shut down that waterway as a weapon. The entire global oil supply gets strangled overnight. $110 a barrel would look cheap compared to what would happen next. And the Gulf countries know this. Kuwait felt it already. A wave of hostile drones targeted fuel storage at Kuwait International Airport. Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the UAE, Qatar, all of them reported fresh aerial attacks. The fire from this war is spreading across the whole region like nobody planned for. Israel is now striking oil storage sites inside Iran directly. A CNN team standing in Tehran watched black rain fall from the sky on Sunday morning. Black rain from the smoke of the Shahran oil depot burning after an Israeli airstrike. That image says everything. A city waking up to black rain falling from the sky. This is not a regional conflict anymore. This is a war with a global price tag. And ordinary people everywhere are already starting to pay it. If you are watching this and you want to understand how this war connects directly to your daily life, stay right here. Part 4 breaks down the military moves happening on the ground right now that the mainstream media is barely talking about. Subscribe now, share this video, because the people around you need to understand what is actually happening in the world today. 9 days into this war, and the military picture is changing every single hour. Let us break down exactly what is happening on the ground, because this is where the real story lives. This is where soldiers are dying. This is where children are caught in the crossfire. And this is where decisions are being made that will shape the next decade of world history. Start with Israel, because Israel is not sitting back and waiting. Israel has moved this conflict into a brand new phase. They are no longer just targeting military installations. They are now hitting oil storage sites deep inside Iran. Strategic strikes designed to cripple Iran's economy from the inside, to drain the money that funds Iran's military machine, to squeeze the country until it cannot afford to fight back. That is the strategy. Hit the money. Hit the fuel, hit the supply lines, make the war too expensive for Iran to continue. But Iran is hitting back in ways that are now starting to draw real blood. For the first time since this war began, Israeli soldiers have been killed. 2 soldiers dead in southern Lebanon. At least 14 others wounded along the Israel-Lebanon border. Now, 2 soldiers may sound like a small number compared to the scale of everything else happening. But those 2 deaths carry enormous weight because they tell the world that this war now has Israeli casualties. And when Israeli soldiers start dying, the political pressure inside Israel to hit harder becomes overwhelming. Hezbollah in Lebanon is still active, still firing, still keeping Israel fighting on 2 fronts at the same time. That is a deliberate strategy designed to stretch Israeli forces thin and force them to divide their attention. Now, here is the part of the story that is making governments around the world deeply uncomfortable. A school was hit. An Iranian elementary school sitting right next to a naval base in Iran was struck during a United States airstrike. More than 160 students were killed, 160 children. Trump came out and said Iran was responsible. He said Iran put a military base next to a school on purpose to use children as a shield. But then new video surfaced. Video that appears to show clearly that it was a United States airstrike that hit that location, not Iran, 160 children, and a direct contradiction between what the president said and what the video evidence appears to show. That single incident is now sending shockwaves through international courts, human rights organizations, and foreign governments around the world. America's allies are asking very hard questions, and the answers coming from Washington are not satisfying anyone. This is the part of war that never gets discussed enough. The part where the story on the ground does not match the story being told to the public, where what leaders say and what cameras show are 2 completely different things. And right now the whole world is watching, because if that video evidence holds up, the political fallout for the United States could be massive. Congressional hearings, international investigations, allies distancing themselves publicly from Washington. Trump has called for unconditional surrender from Iran. The White House believes this campaign could last 4 to 6 more weeks, but with every passing day, the cost of this war grows higher in money, in oil prices, in lives, and in the trust that the world places in American leadership. The pressure is building from every direction, and something has to give. Stay right here for part 5. Because the final part of this report brings everything together and tells you exactly what is likely to happen next and what it means for the world going forward. This is the video you need to share with everyone you know today. Subscribe right now and hit the notification bell so you never miss a breakdown like this one. So here's where everything stands right now. A brand new supreme leader sits at the top of Iran, chosen by a closed circle of powerful men, son of the leader that America and Israel just killed, a man who has never governed a nation in the middle of a war, a man who woke up this week with the weight of 85 million people on his shoulders, and a United States president publicly calling him a lightweight. America is all in. Operation Epic Fury is still running at full force. Trump is demanding unconditional surrender. The White House is telling the world this could go on for another 4 to 6 weeks. But anyone who has ever studied war knows that timelines in warfare are the first thing that falls apart. The Gulf countries are under drone attack. Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the UAE, Qatar. The entire region is a live battlefield right now. Every country sitting near Iran is calculating its own survival. Oil is at $110 a barrel and still moving upward. World stock markets are falling. Economies that were already struggling are now facing a new wave of inflation driven entirely by the price of energy. And sitting underneath all of this is a question that nobody in Washington is answering clearly yet. What does unconditional surrender actually look like for Iran? Because Iran is not a small country. It is not a weak nation. It has a deeply religious population that has been told for decades that America and Israel are their enemies, even with their supreme leader gone, even with their oil depots burning, even with their military being struck night after night. Getting Iran to surrender unconditionally is not like flipping a switch. History teaches a very hard lesson about wars fought with the goal of total surrender. They tend to last longer than anyone predicts. They tend to cost more than anyone budgets. And they tend to create new problems that are worse than the ones they were meant to solve. The 160 children killed near that naval base are already becoming a symbol around the world. A symbol that Iran and its allies will use to build international pressure against the United States for months and possibly years to come. Images like that do not disappear. They travel, they spread, they change minds in countries that were sitting quietly on the fence. Mojtaba Khamenei knows this. His first weapon is not missiles. His first weapon is that image, that story, the story of a school, the story of children, the story of a superpower that hit a target next to an elementary school and then tried to blame the other side. Trump's warning that this new leader will not last long may well be true. The military pressure on Iran is enormous and growing every single day. But the political and moral pressure on the United States is also growing. And in the modern world, wars are not won by missiles alone. They are won by the story the world chooses to believe. Right now, two very different stories are being told, and the world is deciding which one to trust. This war is 9 days old. The White House says 4 to 6 more weeks. But the ground is saying something different. The ground is saying this is bigger and harder and more complicated than any timeline suggests. Watch this space, because what happens in the next 7 days will tell the world whether this ends with a surrender or spirals into something far larger and far more dangerous than anyone planned for. That is the full picture. That is the story. Nobody else is breaking down this clearly for you. If this video gave you real understanding of what is happening in the world today, subscribe to this channel right now. Share this video with 3 people who need to understand what is going on. Because informed people make better decisions. And in times like these, understanding the world around you is not optional. It is necessary. The world is changing fast. Stay close, stay informed, and stay right here.